But today's video we'll be talking about the PRUR gear, something a lot of you guys probably are aiming for, but it takes a really long time to get. So this video probably concern probably like less than 200 of you guys, if even that. So we're talking about PRUR gear for today's video. If you guys don't know what those are, there's 3 of them in the game as of right now. The Prototype 457s, the Prototype 234s, and the Prototype Tenrai right here, Nakajima Tenrai. So there's 3 of them, PR2, PR3, and PR4. So for today's video, we're talking about how many of these you really want for a setup. So PR2 first, the Prototype 457s. Ideally, you want 3, but if you want to go for the bare minimum, you want 2. I say 2 because you want 1 for each damage dealer. If you guys don't know already, there's 3 backliners, so there's 3 slots. You want 2 minimum because sometimes a lot of people run a buffer with 2 damage dealer back BBs for 3 BB setups. So for example, one of the backline setups that a lot of people use is FDG, New Jersey, and Duke of York. You have Duke of York and you have FDG and New Jersey as your damage dealer, and then you have Duke of York as your buffer. So the damage dealers, New Jersey and FDG, will want to get these guns, whereas if you're using like a buffer like Duke of York, then the new prototype gear or whatever from the Gear Labs will do just fine because it is much faster than the 457. So this makes it so Duke of York can go much faster. Now that being said, you can still run a 3 457 setup with Duke of York, but you gotta slot in a gold fire control radar. If you do that, Duke of York will still go first, and the others will follow up right after her. Well, except FDG, maybe because of her reload skill, but you get the idea, right? So minimum, you want to go for at least 2. Ideally, you want to go for 3. Now, the Prototype 234 Drake gun. This, you want a minimum of 1 because obviously Drake works very well with this gun. So if you have Drake, you want this gun right here. Ideally, you want 2. Now, I say 2 because there's a lot of setups in this game that you can run. But one of the minimum setups, or one of the setups that a lot of people use, is the Drake and Rune Moose setup. So if you're using the Drake and Rune Moose setup, both of them are heavy cruisers. You want 1 of them for each. So ideally, you want to go for 2. Now, this is a rare setup because I know a lot of people, especially when the carrier setups, they run like something like Kazagumo, Helena, and a flex tank like a large cruiser or Drake, depending on the situation. So you're using 1 here. So a minimum, you want at least 1 237. Otherwise, though, if you guys are running like a Rune Moose with a Drake setup or whatever, you want to go for 2. As of right now, I'm going for my second one. So having 2 of these is ideal. Otherwise, 1 should be more than enough for whatever content a lot of you guys are doing. So don't have to worry about it that much. This is a low priority gun for the most part. It's about min-maxing. You don't have to worry about it that much. And as for the Prototype Tenrai right here, you want a minimum of 1. Obviously, if it's not obvious enough, you want it for Hakuryu because Hakuryu right here has a skill where she gets a 15% aviation and a 15% accuracy bonus when you have a Sakura aircraft right here. So Tenrai is the best Sakura Empire dive bomber slot. Makes it very comfortable slot in for the dive bombers, and 150% efficiency as well too. Now obviously you can do comets as well too, but you won't get as much benefits from the comet compared to the Tenrai because this does much more damage compared to the comets right here because of bombs and whatnot, large bombs and damage. So this is much better, and she's just one of the better setups for dive bombers altogether. You want to have a Hakuryu, and she's one of the premier damage dealer carriers as of right now in the game. So you want to have at least 1. Now, if you want convenience, then you want to go for 2. Not only do you want it for Hakuryu, but you want it for Aquila as well. Aquila works very well with this dive bomber because in PvP or whatever content you're doing, she has preload. She just rolls with all that massive dive bomber damage with the Tenrai, despite being a very low slow speed dive bomber. It doesn't matter because she has preload. So no matter what duration of speed you have for that dive bomber, it doesn't matter because Aquila has preload. She just fire it right away. So it's better to use a very strong dive bomber in this case. So Aquila works very well here. So once again, if a minimum of 1 is when you go for the Tenrai. Otherwise, you go for 2 for convenience. Now, there are some cases I can see in the future where people run 3 Tenrais, 1 for each of the premier carriers. As of right now, if you guys don't know what the premier setup is for carrier, it is Hakuryu, Shinano, and Arc Royal for all your bossing needs. They both, or all 3 of them, have a dive bomber slot. You can definitely run something with that. So 3 dive bombers is a thing, and 3 Tenrais is a potential thing as well too. Now, you wouldn't run this in like meta 15s or whatever because this is a much slower dive bomber compared to others. Unless you're doing like some kind of medium armor stuff, then that could work there. But if you're doing like a heavy armor fight or whatever, then it's hard to work with the Tenrai. But that's where cats come in. So if you're doing like hermit fight or whatever, you have cats with reload. Then you can use much slower dive bombers, and it should work perfectly fine. So as of right now, you want a minimum of 1, 2 for convenience, and maybe down the line when people have like 3 Tenrais. I don't know who's gonna have 3 Tenrais, but I can definitely see like somewhere like next year or something, someone's running 3 Tenrais on each of these carriers, and it's gonna do a lot of damage. So one minimum there, 2 convenience, and 3 somewhere down the line. So hopefully that answers questions that maybe like 100 of you guys may have about these gear or whatever. Once again, you want at least 2 of the 457s for your damage dealers, and ideally you want 3 to run on everyone, even your buffers as well too, to get the maximum damage for battleships. For the prototype 234s, the Drake gun, minimum of 1, ideally 2 for Rune, Moose, and Drake if you're running both of them. Otherwise, running it on just Rune, Moose, or Drake when you bring one of them is perfectly fine. And for prototype Tenrai, minimum of 1 for Hakuryu, 2 for convenience for Aquila and for Hakuryu, and 3 down the line if you're running like 3 if you want to play around with like 3 dive bomber carriers, Arc Royal, Shinano, and Hakuryu. Each of them have a dive bomber slot, and each of them can make Tenrai just add a little bit more damage to their damage output. So hopefully I didn't screw up that recording, and hopefully it captured it and not mute myself again. Enjoy the video, guys, and good luck on your PR gear farming, because this is literally one of the longest grinds in the game, and it's dreadful even.